The sun on Varix 9 was pale and distant. It cast a gray light over the cracked ground and rusted buildings. The sky was always filled with dust, swirling like smoke, hiding the stars. Every day felt the same, hot, dry, and heavy with silence. The colony had once been full of hope. People came here to build a better future. But that was long ago. Now it was just a mining outpost, controlled by the Zarth Dominion. The Zarth didn't care about the people. They only cared about the minerals buried deep in the rock. Kale Draven worked in the machine bay. He repaired drills, loaders, and transport rigs. He was quiet. He didn't talk much. People said he used to be in the military, back on Earth. But no one knew for sure. He kept to himself and stayed out of trouble. Kale wore old coveralls and kept his dark hair short. His hands were always stained with grease. He moved like someone who had learned to stay alert. Even when he was fixing a broken engine, his eyes watched everything. Today was like any other. The sirens wailed at dawn. Workers lined up to be scanned by Zarth guards. The guards were tall, armored, and silent. Their eyes glowed blue behind smooth black helmets. No one dared to speak when they were near. Kale walked past them, calm and steady. In the corner of his locker, behind a metal panel, he kept something hidden, a torn patch from an old Earth Fleet uniform. It was the only piece of his past he had kept. At midday, word spread fast through the colony. A girl named Lena had been taken. She was young, maybe 14, and had stolen food for her sick brother. The Zarth had no patience for theft. They called it treason. Kale heard the whispers while tightening bolts on a damaged crawler. The workers near him kept their voices low. They dragged her away. To the tower. She won't come back. They said others are next. Kale kept working, but his jaw tightened. He had seen too many things like this, on other planets, in other wars. The Zarth ruled through fear. They wanted people to feel helpless. That night Kale walked alone through the colony. The streets were empty. The wind blew fine dust into his eyes. He looked up at the sky. Somewhere far beyond those clouds was Earth, the place he once called home. The place that had gone silent. People here still believed Earth would save them. But Kale wasn't so sure anymore. It had been years since Earth had sent help. Maybe they had forgotten Varix 9. Maybe they just didn't care. He stopped by a wall where someone had scratched a message in the metal. "We are not alone." Kale stared at it for a long time. Then he turned and walked back toward the machine bay. Something was changing. He could feel it in his bones. The silence was ending. Soon someone would have to act. The next morning, the air was colder than usual. Dust clung to everything. Kale stood in the machine bay, tightening bolts on a mining rig. His hands moved on their own, but his mind was somewhere else, on Lena, the girl taken by the Zarth guards. She was just a kid. She had stolen food, not because she was greedy, but because her brother was sick and starving. Everyone knew it. Everyone also knew what the Zarth would do to her. Kale tried to focus on his work, but he couldn't. The same question kept repeating in his mind. How much longer will we let this happen? That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the dusty hills, Kale headed to the edge of the colony. It was quiet there. Few people walked outside after dark. The guards preferred it that way. He reached an old comms tower, broken, unused, and half buried in sand. Once it connected the colony to other systems. Now it was nothing more than a skeleton of steel and wires. He looked around. No one was watching. From the shadows, 3 figures stepped out. One of them was Malin, a power station tech. He was in his 40s, nervous, always looking over his shoulder. Beside him stood Rhea, a strong, sharp-eyed woman who worked in the food depot. The third was Dax, barely 20. A scavenger who knew the colony's hidden tunnels better than anyone. "You came," Malin said, surprised. "I'm here," Kale replied simply. Rhea looked at the tower. "Can you fix it?" Kale walked up to the base, pulling open a rusted panel. He stared at the tangle of wires inside. "It'll take work," The transmitter's dead. But I might be able to reroute power from the backup grid. We just need one signal, Rhea said. Just one message to reach Earth. Kale didn't answer right away. He remembered how Earth had fallen silent. No aid, no patrols, no messages. Just silence. They haven't answered in years, he said quietly. What makes you think they'll answer now? Because we have no other choice, Malin whispered. Kale looked into their faces. He saw fear, but also something else. Hope. A fragile, desperate kind of hope. He sighed and rolled up his sleeves. Let's get to work. They spent the night inside the tower. Dax brought cables and tools. Rhea kept watch from the roof. Kale crawled into the belly of the machine, reconnecting power lines, resetting fuses, and bringing the cold heart of the tower back to life. It was nearly dawn when the console blinked. A faint green light. The signal was ready. What do we send? Malin asked. Kale pulled out a small dust-covered chip from his pocket. It was old, full of Earth fleet codes he had memorized long ago. He slotted it into the panel. I'm sending a priority distress code, he said. If Earth still has ships listening, this will get their attention. He typed quickly, fingers steady to Earth Fleet Command. Virex 9 under Dominion control. Civilians at risk. Need immediate assistance. Coordinates attached. Code Phoenix X31. He hesitated. Do you think it will work? Rhea asked. Kale pressed send. I don't know, he said. But they'll hear us. One way or another. The signal vanished into space. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. They waited. Nothing came back. No reply. No sound. Only silence. Kale stood there staring at the stars he couldn't see. But something inside him had changed. He had sent the signal. The silence had been broken. And sometimes that was how everything began. Days passed, the signal was gone, lost in space. No reply came, no ships, no word, just silence. Hope faded quickly in Virex 9. Kale kept working in the machine bay by day. At night he met with the others. Rhea, Malin, and Dax. They sat in dark corners and whispered plans. The Zarth wouldn't wait long before showing their strength again. The executions were still scheduled. Lena and the others were locked in a holding cell beneath the control tower. Armed guards stood outside. The people of the colony were told to attend. It was meant to be a message, obey or die. Kale couldn't let that happen. We can't wait for Earth, Rhea said one night. If help isn't coming, we have to act now. Kale nodded. Then we make the Zarth feel our presence. Quietly, piece by piece. That was the start of the resistance. Small things at first. Dax slipped into a power station and cut the lights in one sector. The next day, a mining rig malfunctioned and exploded. Kale had rigged its cooling system to fail. Rhea sent workers into the storage depots and stole food, water, and tools. The Zarth responded with more patrols, more checkpoints, more punishments. But the colony had begun to change. People started to look at each other differently. Not with fear, but with silent questions. Is something happening? Is someone fighting back? Then one evening, Dax ran into the machine bay, breathless. They found something, he said. They're searching for the signal source. Kale's hands froze over the engine he was repairing. Where? The old comms tower. Kale grabbed his tools and followed Dax through the alleys. They climbed into the upper levels of a crumbling structure nearby. From there they could see the tower in the distance. Zarth soldiers moving in and out, dragging wires, scanning the area. They're close, Dax said. Too close. Kale thought fast. If they find the chip I used, they'll trace the code. We need to destroy it. That night, while the others created a distraction at the supply depot, Kale slipped back into the comms tower alone. He moved fast and silent, the way he had in the past, during missions no one here knew about. Inside, the panel still blinked faintly. He yanked the chip out and smashed it under his boot. Then he rewired the panel to fry the signal core. Sparks jumped from the walls. The tower went dead. As he turned to leave, a voice stopped him. I knew someone was behind this. Cale spun around. Governor Varel Thack stood in the doorway, tall and calm. His eyes glowed blue like the others, but there was something colder in his stare. You are not like the others, Cale Thack said. You move like a soldier. Earthborn, I assume. Cale didn't answer. You should have stayed quiet. Cale Thack continued. Now you've given the people false hope. That is dangerous. Cale raised his hand slowly. I'm just a mechanic. Thack smiled. Not anymore. Suddenly, soldiers rushed in. Cale fought fast, brutal, but there were too many. A blow to the head dropped him to his knees. Darkness swallowed him. When Cale woke, he was in a cell. Cold metal walls. A faint hum in the air. His head ached. Outside, voices spoke in low tones. The executions will proceed as planned, Thack said. And now we have a traitor to add to the list. Cale closed his eyes. No signal. No help. Still, somewhere deep inside him, he hoped. Maybe Earth had heard. Maybe silence was not the same as absence. But the day of reckoning was almost here. Cale sat on the cold floor of the prison cell. His head throbbed. A cut above his brow had dried, leaving a line of blood across his face. The cell was small. Just steel walls, no window, no bed, only silence. He didn't know how long he had been there. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door opened with a hiss. 2 Zarth guards entered, their armor humming with energy. Between them stood Governor Thack. Thack stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was calm and sharp. You sent the signal, he said. You broke Dominion law. You sparked rebellion. Why? Cale looked up slowly. Because someone had to. Thack tilted his head. And what did you expect? Earth to come flying in like heroes. They have forgotten you. All of you. You're dust to them. Cale didn't answer. Thack stepped closer. Tomorrow, we execute the rebels. You will watch. It will end this nonsense. The colony will learn what happens when they hope for rescue. Cale met his gaze. You're afraid. Thack's face twitched, just a little. Then he turned and walked away. The door hissed shut. Outside, the colony prepared for the execution. The Zarth set up a platform in the main square. The workers were forced to build it with their own hands. People were ordered to gather there at dawn. To witness Res, Melon, and Dax moved quietly through the shadows that night. They watched the square from a rooftop. Their faces were grim. They've got Cale, Dax whispered. They'll kill him with the others. We have to do something, Melon said, his voice shaking. Rhea's jaw was tight. We don't have weapons. We don't have time. All we can do now is wait. Wait for what? Melon asked. Rhea looked up at the sky. For Earth. Inside his cell, Cale sat against the wall, weak but alert. He could hear voices outside. Heavy footsteps. Orders barked in Zarth language. The colony was waking up to a day of death. He closed his eyes, thought about the girl, Lena, thought about her brother, thought about the people he tried to protect. Was this the end? No ships, no signal, just silence. Cale leaned his head back and whispered to himself. I tried. A loud hum filled the air. Then a deep vibration. The lights in the hallway flickered. Cale opened his eyes. Was it a power surge? A moment later he felt it again. A low, deep rumble. Not from the prison. From the sky. The sound of something massive. Outside, the people looked up. Dust blew from the rooftops. The air grew thick. A strange shadow began to crawl across the colony. Someone screamed. Over the horizon, black shapes appeared. Huge and silent. Ships. Dozens. No, hundreds. They floated through the clouds like ghosts, blocking the sunlight. Their hulls were dark and gleaming, with blue engines that hummed like thunder. The Earth fleet had come. In the prison, alarms blared. Cale stood, heart pounding. A blast shook the floor. Somewhere above, metal tore apart. The door to his cell burst open. Dax stood there breathing hard, holding a stolen keycard. Come on, he shouted. Kale didn't wait. They ran through the broken halls, smoke rising around them. Outside, Earth's dreadnoughts began to land. Dropships poured from their bellies. Bright blue lights scanned the ground. Zarth soldiers scattered in confusion. The sky, once filled with dust, now burned with light. Hope had come at last. The sky was fire and thunder. Earth's dreadnoughts descended like mountains from the heavens. They were massive, black, smooth, and glowing, with blue light. Each one moved in silence, but their engines hummed with deep power that shook the ground. People in the colony stood frozen. Some cried. Some dropped to their knees. After so many years they had given up hope. But now Earth had come, not with words, but with force. The Zarth soldiers panicked. Sirens screamed across Virex 9. Orders were shouted in their harsh alien tongue. But it was too late. Earth's dropships spread out, landing near the command tower, the prisons, and the power stations. Troops in dark armor poured out, fast and focused. Kale and Dax ran through the chaos, dodging between buildings as explosions lit the sky. "They're everywhere," Dax yelled. "Good," Kale said, his voice steady. "Let's finish this." They moved toward the execution platform in the square. The platform was still there, empty now. The crowd scattered, the guards gone. But Kale had one goal left. Find Thak, end it. Inside the Zarth command tower, Governor Thak stood in front of a large screen. His face was pale, jaw clenched. The dreadnoughts filled every view. Earth's signal was jamming their systems. His own fleet in orbit had gone silent. He turned to his officers. "Evacuate, we retreat. Burn the records. No survivors." But before they could move, the wall exploded. Smoke and sparks filled the room. Kale stepped through the hole, a blaster in his hand. His face was bruised, covered in dust, but his eyes burned with purpose. Tak reached for his weapon, too slow. Kale fired once, hitting Thak's hand. The weapon flew across the room. Tak fell to his knees, gasping. Kale stepped closer. "You wanted Earth to stay silent," Kale said. "You were wrong." Tak looked up at him, eyes full of hate. "You think you've won," he hissed. "They came for you now, but they will forget again. You are nothing to them." Kale lowered the blaster, staring at him. "We don't need to be remembered," he said. "We just need to be free." He turned and walked away. He could have killed Thak, but he didn't. That wasn't the victory the colony needed. That wasn't the message they would send. Outside, Earth soldiers secured the area. Dreadnoughts hovered above the colony, casting long shadows. Zarth forces surrendered or fled. Rhea, Malin, and dozens of colonists stood in the square, watching the skies. Kale walked into the light. People turned. They stared at him. Some clapped, some wept. But Kale just nodded. "We held on," he said simply. "That's all we had to do." Above them, an Earth officer stepped out of a command ship. She wore a blue uniform, clean and sharp. "I'm Commander Sato," she said. "We heard your signal. It took time. But we're here now. You're not alone anymore." Kale looked at her, and for the first time in years, he smiled. The dust on Virex 9 began to settle. Earth's dreadnoughts hung in the sky like silent guardians. Dropships circled slowly, their lights scanning the ground. The Zarth flags had been torn down, their soldiers disarmed. The fear that once ruled the colony was gone. For the first time in years, the people of Virex 9 stood without looking over their shoulders. Kale stood at the edge of the square, watching workers dismantle the execution platform. The wood was burned. The metal was pulled apart. No one wanted it to stand a moment longer. Behind him, Earth fleet soldiers moved through the colony, handing out food packs and water. Medics treated the wounded. Engineers inspected broken systems. Commander Sato joined Kale, her hands behind her back. "You did more than send a signal," she said. "You kept this place alive." Kale shook his head. "I didn't do it alone," she smiled. "Most don't." They looked out across the colony. Children were laughing again. Some climbed onto old mining rigs and pretended to fly them like ships. Families gathered in small groups, talking and planning. The silence of fear had been replaced by the sound of life. Rhea approached with Malin and Dax. "It's done," she said simply. Kale nodded. "For now. What happens next?" Dax asked. Commander Sato answered. "We stay. We'll help rebuild. Earth remembers now." Kale looked to the sky. The dreadnoughts still hovered, casting long, wide shadows over the land. But they weren't scary anymore. They were symbols of strength, of protection, of home. The people raised a new flag on a steel pole in the center of the colony. It was Earth's flag, blue and white, marked with the old symbol of unity. It flapped in the wind above the crowd. Kale stepped forward and placed his old Earth Fleet patch on the base of the pole, the same patch he had hidden for years. He stood up straight and looked out over Virex 9. The colony had changed. The people had changed. And so had he. For the first time in a long time, he believed in something again. They had sent a signal into the dark, and someone had answered.